I titled today's mind map, Personal Magnetism in Relationship with Others. As we've been discussing in our last Sunday's video and the recent series of videos, that our goal here is to maintain a state of mind in which automatically what expresses from that is the communication, the behaviors. And when I'm talking about communication, I'm talking about verbal and nonverbal, body language, vibe of ourselves and others that we would consider ideal, that reflects what we are thinking. Now, this is extremely powerful for day-to-day life, those in a position of facilitating behavioral change or transformational change in another person. What we're understanding to a deeper degree, and I trust you've been noticing this as well, applying this information, is that others reflect the changes in regards to what we persuaded ourselves about. Now, a couple books I want to bring into the discussion today. Number one is Mental Fascination by William Walker Atkinson. And number two is Suggestion and Autosuggestion, also by William Walker Atkinson. Now he says, I shall use the term mental fascination. It is the sense of the action that powerfully influences the imagination of another. Now, we might see how a person expresses in their body language, in their voice tonality, in the words that they use, what they say, when they say, why they say, in how they facilitate the behavioral and transformational change in another person. The reality is, those are effects from the state of mind that person is in. And it automatically expresses. Now, granted, a person can facilitate results by trying and doing certain things. However, what we do want to keep into consideration here, as we've been working with this information, is working with states of mind, which automatically express. Body is an expression of mind. Voice, what we say, how we say. Verbal, non-verbal communication is an expression of the state of mind that we are in. So we get into the state of mind. So let's talk about this here because he mentions this. He says, they think that their effects are produced by suggestion alone and forget the mental state behind the suggestion, which is the real motive force. Why is it that two individuals using the same words of suggestion upon the same subject produce varying degrees of effect? We can go beyond words here. We can talk about body language, how we carry ourselves, how we express ourselves in any shape or form. How does it produce different effects by those that are experiencing? He says it is because the mental state or the dynamic mentation of the two individuals vary in quality and degree. The suggestionist thinks that they are merely directing their suggestion by words toward the subject, but all the time they are pouring out a current of mentative energy which rapidly induces the desired mental state in the subject. The best suggestionists are those who have acquired the suggestive manner, which is developed by the exercise of authoritative utterances and commands, the physical appearance, manner, and tones arising from a reflection of the mental state within. So in other words, all of that, authoritative utterances, commands, physical appearance, manner, and tones, are effects that play out from the state of mind. Now, I would notice this very vividly when I used to teach these speed reading workshops, 2010, 11, 12, 13, on behalf of Iris Reading. We did this in partnerships. And I would notice that when I was in a certain state of mind, we can call that a suggestive manner, others seem to listen attentively, seem to produce results faster. They seem to be deeply engaged in the conversation. And when I was in a different state of mind, one of lack of congruence, insecurity, others would reflect that in their behaviors, in their body language, in the vibe. See, what we want to do is we want to discover the various thinking patterns that we have within ourselves that seems to get us out of that state. It's our own thinking patterns in relation to. For example, let's say you speak publicly and someone says something to you. It's our own interpretations in relation to what the person says that determines if we are going to maintain that state or go into a different state of mind. We are the only suggester within mind in which others play out the theater of that state of mind. Notice this. As you become more of who you truly, authentically are, you seem to be around people that not only reflect that, but seem to encourage it. They say, well, I really like the way that you are. I like the way that you talk. I like the stuff that you say. It is so resonant with who I am, which proves the point again that people show up saying the same things that we imagine about ourselves. Now, this is true for if a person is operating from a degree of congruence or self-confidence that we could say high level, or if a person is operating from lack of self-confidence. Now, the beautiful thing is self-confidence is found within and it automatically expresses as a person lets go of thinking patterns that are not true to how they really are. See, what this is about is becoming more of how we truly are, and others show up automatically to reflect that. And then we can say, oh, that person has mental fascination. And you ask the person, why would you say that that person is suggestive, authoritative? Well, look at what they say. Look at how they say it. Look at their physical appearances. Look at their manners. Look at how they communicate. And maybe some people might assume that those are the things. And while those things are part of the mental state, we want to recognize that it's the mental state. So how does a person get into the mental state? Well, let's discuss his other book here, Suggestion and Autosuggestion. It's what we're suggesting to ourselves. See, all day long, we're going through life experiences in conversations with others, relationships, personal life. And based on what they do, what they say, we're forming conclusions or we're reconfirming certain conclusions about ourselves in relation to others. And as we go down this pathway, if a person really wants to be how they are, they want to identify any thinking patterns doing the subconscious mind work. Identify certain thinking patterns. If a person looks at you a certain way and you feel disempowered as a result of them looking at you that way, ask yourself, is this really true? Is this really how I am? How I truly am, that ideal state of mind. And then you can say, well, what was the thinking pattern that was brought to the surface? Maybe a person says, I don't deserve to have this kind of relationship that I want. People do not accept me for who I am. What I desire, what I want, does not want me back. And we say, is that true? Are you saying it's true for certain things of your life versus others? Well, what if you change those thinking patterns? What if you say, more so every day I realize that people desire me as I desire them? What if you say, others show up to reflect my thinking patterns, which are true and lovely? Thus, I see it. People accept me more so. Another video that I recommend watching is the one I released last week in regards to letting go of shame. We find that shame seems to create this disconnect between who we truly are and our outer world experiences. These thinking patterns, which we can relate over to shame, again, watch that video, is creating convoluted behaviors, relationships with others, when in actuality, we want to be how we really want to be. Now, where do we get this information from? It's important to keep into consideration what he says here in regards to the 5 classes of suggestion. Suggestion of authority. He says, suggestion of authority manifests both in the positive authoritative statements directed to the point, and also by the spoken or written statements made by those who speak or write with an air of authority. Well, maybe in an earlier stage of our life, we blindly believe and our own interpretations, our own thinking patterns in relation to what they were suggesting, formed conclusions, which we can call self-image aspects, in which we see ourselves to be a certain way. If these aspects are in relation to self-confidence, being how we truly want to be, further encouraging to go within ourselves and recognize we already have the answers within, and we can allow ourselves to be and authentically express with congruence, then a person living from that premise, everything they touch turns to gold, and they seem to express this suggestive manner, and they seem to have people around them that harmoniously, genuinely want to be there like they genuinely want to be there. We could call this healthy relationships. Now, if a person has thinking patterns like, I'm not good enough, I do not deserve, and these thinking patterns came as a result of their own interpretation in regards to what others said about life experiences in the past, and they formed these kind of conclusions within themselves, they have the ability to let go of these thinking patterns by doing the subconscious mind work. Identify the thinking patterns, bring them to the surface. No shaming or condemning ourselves for identifying with these thinking patterns. Ask ourselves, what are the true and accurate thinking patterns? In regards to relationships, for example, does a person really believe that they can have the kind of relationship that they want? Why not? Now they listen to their intuition. So they ask themselves, what kind of relationship do I really want in all its vivid detail? I want this kind of relationship. I desire it. I want to live a certain way in friendships, personal relationships, business partnerships, and I have my criteria. I will write down this criteria, and I will recognize that I am those aspects. Reality is the affirmation in mind. Number 2, the suggestion of association. He says, it is very easy for us to associate certain things with certain other things. And we'll find that when one of these things is recalled, it will bring with it its associated impressions. So maybe a person sees someone that they're interested in, and then all of a sudden they have these certain thinking patterns that are brought to the surface. Oh, I don't deserve. This person wouldn't want to be with me. I'm not good enough. I'm not interesting. See? That is very beneficial to reflect on those statements, those thinking patterns. Write them down in the moment right there and say, is this really how you are? As Steve Jobs said in his commencement speech, and this has been very influential for me over the years when it comes to identifying these thinking patterns and letting them go, which are not true to who I am. Follow your heart and intuition. They somehow already know what you want to become. Have the courage to follow your inner voice. Your inner voice reveals how you truly are. So these associations that we have to relationships, personal life, business life, we can question them. At the end of the day, we are the only suggester. I could suggest anything to you. The reality is you could either accept the suggestion or you could reject the suggestion. It's totally up to you. And I would encourage really going in within yourself and evaluating the different thought processes or communications you have with others, verbal and nonverbal, to reveal the thinking patterns and saying, well, I may have been identifying with these thinking patterns in regards. However, I don't have to identify with these thinking patterns anymore. Suggestion of habit. He says, the suggestion of habit. This form of suggestion is closely allied to the preceding phase, suggestion of association. In fact, some consider it to be merely a branch of the latter, but we feel that there is a decided difference in the operation of the two phases, and accordingly prefer to treat this one as forming a separate and distinctive phase. Of course, all habit is an association with something in the past, but suggestion of habit may arise from an original cause of suggestion of authority, suggestion of association, suggestion of repetition, suggestion of imitation, or else from an original decision of the intellect resulting from correct reasoning. The former act or thought acts as a suggestive outside influence, although it belongs to one's own mentality. So, we go into the state of mind that is ideal by going about our day-to-day life, and if we maintain our flow or ideal state of mind, what we notice is that our conversations, our behaviors, how we relate to others, how they relate to us, is congruent, authentic, fun, and exactly how we truly want to be. And if for whatever the reason we get out of that state of mind, we simply reflect back and say, what was the thinking pattern in relation to whatever happened, what a person said, life experience, this and that, because it's sourced from within. That seems to bring us into a different state of mind. Pause for a moment, write it down. When you saw the person that you were interested in, doing the business deal with, what did you think? That they weren't going to accept you? The reality is that that's the theater that we're looking to play out, unconsciously so, if we identify with, which is not in the state of mind of how we truly aspire to be. When we are in the ideal state of mind, the people automatically show up. We find ourselves automatically doing things. We find ourselves trying less and being more. This is the key distinction. Being. I am this way. This is who I truly am. The behaviors express. The communication expresses. Nonverbal, verbal expresses automatically. You know what to say, when to say, how to say, why to say, without even questioning it. It happens automatically. And as we maintain that state, it appears that reality changes to reflect with all its precision the end result, the vision of how we see ourselves to be accurately, fully, at the destination in our imagination through what we would call, in our Neville Goddard discussions, the bridge of incidence. The person all of a sudden starts communicating congruently. Their body language is more congruent. Their voice tonality is more congruent. They find themselves communicating using words in certain sequences that articulate the point with a higher degree of vivid accuracy in relationship with others. They find themselves automatically expressing. You know, we have that saying, hindsight is 20/20, as in a person goes through an experience in conversation and they say, I didn't say the ideal thing. If only I said this during that time. What they will notice is far less of those occurrences because they'll find they'll automatically say it. We can say this person has a quick wit. They know what to say, quick response. Where's this coming from? It's coming from the state of mind. And as a person maintains that state of mind, they'll see more of this every day. I've noticed this with myself. I've noticed this with working with others. All we do with myself and others is get into the flow and maintain the flow. Get into the ideal state of mind, whatever way you got to do it. Talk to yourself, dance, go for a run, meditate, whatever. You know the things. Actually, I recommend creating a list, an inventory of all the different ways you can get into the state of mind so that you find yourself not only congruent, but also in relation to suggestion of association, habit, authority. Your own thinking patterns will be true and accurate to whatever five sensory experience, and you will interpret it as accurate in relation to the vision. And you won't find yourself being swayed. So I've had this experience in my past. It seemed that other people were swaying my opinion. The reality was my own thinking patterns in relation to what they were saying, in which I was creating that illusion, and in actuality, I was swaying myself. Now, that's okay if I was doing it. No need to shame or condemn myself. Practice this more so. So then we have suggestion of repetition. He says, the suggestion of repetition. This form of suggestion may seem to be very much akin to the preceding phase, suggestion of habit. But there is a marked distinction and difference. Suggestion of habit has its power imparted to it by the habitual repetition of the act or thought on the part of the individual. It's the constant dripping of water wearing away the stone. The suggestion, which passes you without much attention or consideration, when first made, will gain both attention and consideration from you, if it be repeated sufficiently often and in the right manner, which is why I recommend repetition of the same information and repetition of the same information from different perspectives, which includes information that a person consumes, conversations, environments that encourage how you truly want to be. Because through this repetition, it forms the self-image, and then that self-image, which is one with that ideal state of mind, causes the person automatically to communicate in a way that's suggestive in terms of relationship, verbal and nonverbal. And when I'm talking about nonverbal, I'm talking about authentically expressing on how you carry yourself, how you dress, how you live. It's authentic to you. And maybe a third party might look at that and say, well, it's because this person dresses this way. It's because this person drives that car. When in actuality, when we go deeper into it, we recognize that those are authentic, automatic expressions of the state of mind that's ideal to how a person truly is. And what we want to discover is that person's psychology. As I have mentioned this many times, one of my favorite things to do when I connect with people and they would have the expressions of prosperity in their life in whatever shape or form, business, relationships, etc., is I want to understand their psychology. I want to know how they think. I want to know how they see reality. I want to know their paradigm. Because they will say things, they will communicate about things in a certain way. And they would say such distinct, unique things. And I'll say, you know what, that's interesting. What if I started to think like that? For example, one of the thinking patterns that I adopted back in the days was, there are more people like me than I could possibly ever meet. Now, I heard this from an individual that was living that way. And they were growing rapidly in their life. And everywhere they went, whatever stage of the journey that they were in, they always were surrounded by people that were reflective of where they were in that journey. And I said, that's a beautiful way of being. Because if I don't see it that way, then what else am I imagining? That as I continue to grow, I'll feel isolated? I love being around people. And I love being around people that I can further encourage what they truly desire. And they also encourage what I truly desire. And it's a great time. I have a lot of fun. So I kept encouraging that thinking pattern. Now, there are many of these thinking patterns that are distinct. Because what we find is a lot of times these individuals who think these kinds of ways didn't have the desire to write books or talk about this information. But we will find it in their communication, in what they say about how they communicate in regards to themselves, in what they say when they communicate about others. And like paint and paint brushes, that's what's creating reality. Then we got suggestion of imitation. He says, the suggestion of imitation, this form of suggestion, while being in itself a distinct phase of suggestion, nevertheless has a close relationship with the several other forms of suggestion. In the acceptance of suggestion of authority, there is to be found an unconscious imitation of the mental attitude of the person asserting the authority. In suggestion of association, there is an imitation of the associated thing. And in suggestion of repetition, there is to be found evidences of imitation. Examples are found in schools of philosophy, theories, thought, and religion. See, we're at a stage right now where anywhere we go, we want to recognize that we are the only suggester. And in regards to what you hear anyone say, any information, you have the ability to accept it or let it go. You can say, I resonate with this, I identify with this, or not. I believe we're already aware like this. Only we might not have been recognizing to what degree we have been suggesting to ourselves. And my goal all throughout these videos, as I've been working with this with myself and others, because what do we really do in consulting? A person shows up. Yes, I've got the business experience from my IT business, consulting, working with different companies, etc. Most of this has to do with their thinking. The reality is that nowadays, more so than ever before, the business techniques, strategies, and whatever is available today for free on YouTube, on Instagram, all over the place. I see it. Wasn't the case back in the days, but it is the case now. And with all this information available, and this is true not just for business, my personal life, living any kind of life that a person wants, why is it that they have a hard time integrating this information? Well, it's their thinking patterns in relation to the information. So when we talk about relationships, now we see so many different kinds of relationships. A person just says, this is the kind of relationship that I want. They can be inspired by others, or they can go within themselves and say, what do I really want? And discover. And if any doubts, indecision, inaccurate thinking patterns, beliefs are brought to the surface, then that's an opportunity to let them go, because that's not who we are. We let those thinking patterns go. And then as we go through life, if any information seems to play out as theater, or we come across some information and we're interpreting it from the perspective of we can't have what we want, recognize right then and there in that moment that that's what we're suggesting to ourselves, and we don't have to suggest that anymore. If a person wants to suggest it, they certainly can. But if they don't want to, they don't have to suggest it. And this is why I'm an advocate for autosuggestion, as in create your own statements of intent, inner conversations, dialogues, write them down, record them to yourself, read them regularly, say them to yourself, or vary it in different shapes or form in different conversations with yourself and others. And recognize that as you identify with those thinking patterns, you see them expressed more so every day. Reality is the affirmation in mind. And so I had learned this from Think and Grow Rich. There was a whole chapter dedicated to autosuggestion. It was a wonderful thing. And when I came across it, I'm like, wow, this is a gold mine. You mean you could actually write a bunch of statements out and you could say it to yourself, you can suggest it to yourself, and you'll become those statements? You mean I can create whatever statements I want? Well, upon reflection, when we look back at our lives in relation to suggestion of imitation, repetition, habit, association, and authority, we'll recognize, where did we get these thinking patterns from anyways? We were the ones suggesting them to ourselves, although we were unconsciously suggesting to ourselves. Well, upon reflection, this was happening all throughout our lives. Only now, and I further encourage it, a person is to a higher degree understanding of what they're suggesting to themselves. So either you allow certain suggestions to go in which you blindly allow them to go in and mold you to be someone that you're not, or maybe some of them will mold you to be who you are, and that's a hit and miss strategy to me. I rather accurately, clearly define how I am, how I truly am based on my intuition, and encourage the autosuggestions, conversations accordingly. Certainly at the end of these videos, I give autosuggestions which I have integrated and further integrate, which has played out in my relationships, in my business, in the different areas of my life. And so he says, the phenomena of suggestion and that of autosuggestion can also blend into each other in subtle degrees. So in suggestion, as in you receive outside suggestion, recognize that you are still the suggester in relation to those suggestions. So if I suggest anything to you, a book suggests anything to you, anyone suggests anything to you, you have the ability to accept or reject that suggestion. You have the ability to consciously do it. You have a relationship to that suggestion in which you are authoritative or transcendent to that suggestion. And then we apply our distinct autosuggestions of how we truly see ourselves to be. And so he says, the phenomena of suggestion and that of autosuggestion can blend into each other in subtle degrees. For instance, one may receive an impression from outside, an impression which is the effect of a suggestion from outside, and being impressed by it, they may think about it over and think and feel about it, so that the idea takes a firm hold upon them. Up to this point, it is a suggestion in its general phase, but then the suggestion is repeated to themselves, both in self-communication and in conversation with others, until an impression is made much deeper than that caused by the original impression. This secondary effect is autosuggestion, of course. So let's bring this all the way back to the beginning here. What we're looking to do is maintain the congruence of who we truly are as a result of letting go of thinking patterns that are not how we are by doing the subconscious mind work, which is a lot of fun. So I don't even call it subconscious mind work because I love further revealing these thinking patterns and letting them go. Letting them go. No shame, no judgment, no condemnation. Let them go. Why? Because then I discover the true and accurate thinking patterns in relation to how I am, and I get to live how I truly want to live. Increasingly more so every day. And then in regards to friendships, relationships, business partners, clients, etc., people show up revealing with all accuracy, more so every day, what we say in communication, verbal and non-verbal communication, and they genuinely want to be there. We genuinely want to be there. And we can call that harmonious relationship. And this is all by suggesting to ourselves everything we're talking about here. So we become, and it reflects. We become inside, or we be inside, and the relationships reflect automatically. No trying, no looking for, no needing, reflects automatically. Be, reflect. Be, reflect. He says, they think that their effects are produced by suggestion alone and forget the mental state behind the suggestion, which is the real motive force. So again, be, reflect. And to emphasize, he says, why is it that two individuals using the same words of suggestion upon the same subject produce varying degrees of effect? Well, we could say one individual, be, reflect. The other individual, trying, and reflection, unnecessary conflict in relationship, etc. He says it is because the mental states or dynamic mentation of the two individuals vary in quality and degree. The suggestionist thinks they're merely directing their suggestion by words toward the subject, but all the time they are pouring out a current of mentative energy, true authenticity, there's no faking. More so every day, I identify certain thinking patterns as I go about my day-to-day journey, and I have fun doing it. I don't stress myself out doing it. I let go of those thinking patterns. I become more of who I am, and it reflects. And so he says, the suggestionist thinks that they're merely directing their suggestions by words towards the subject. But all the time, they are pouring out the current of mentative energy, which rapidly induces the desired mental state in the subject. Now, here's the beautiful thing. That other person genuinely wants to be there, and you genuinely want to be there. That's why I say what you imagine imagines you back. So I have a conversation with them, and they give me their reasons of why they genuinely want to be there. Because this is done from a place of truth, love, authenticity. Authenticity. Love is who we truly are. And he says the best suggestionists are those who have acquired the suggestive manner. So now we've taken it to a degree of love, suggestive manner, truth of how you actually are. And he says, which is developed by the exercise of authoritative utterances and commands and physical appearances, manner, and tones arising. Those are effects of, from, he says, reflection of the mental state within. So that's what we do. We let go of the thinking patterns more so every day. Of who we are not, we become who we are, we maintain who we are, and it reflects automatically. No trying. Reflects automatically. You'll know what to say, when to say, why to say, how to say. You don't even have to think about those things. Body language, voice tonality, congruence, reflecting as others showing up to reveal our thinking patterns in relation to love and harmony within, in all its vivid accuracy, and this increases more so every day. So I trust you found this video to be helpful. Let's go ahead and conclude this with an autosuggestion to further encourage. We could say, I recognize that I am the authority within, and I'm able to, as a result, identify the true and accurate thinking patterns of how I really am, and easily and in a fun, flow-based way, let go of the thinking patterns of who I'm not to further reveal who I am, forming the habit in association and relationship with others, which further repeats itself as harmonious relationships, which further encourage how I truly am. Others show up how they truly are. And as the effect in personal life, business life, others show up based on who they are, recognizing that the outer is a reflection of the inner. As I am within, so without. If you would like a copy of this mind map, the link is in the description. Thank you very much for watching. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.